Welcome to the Diary of Discovery, the podcast where we delve deep into the human experience of healing and transformation. I'm your host, Jacky, and each week we will sit down with inspiring individuals who have embarked on their own personal journeys of healing and self-discovery. From overcoming trauma to navigating life's challenges, our guests share their raw and honest stories, offering insights, wisdom, and hope to all who tune in. So grab your favorite cup of tea, find a cozy spot, and join us as we uncover the power of resilience, courage, and the pursuit of authenticity. This is the Diary of Discovery. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited. This week we have the lovely Veena joining us. So Veena, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
So my name is Veena Sharma. I am a Chief Freedom Officer. I'll explain what that is in a moment. And I'm based in London, and that's me. Chief Freedom Officer. I'm going to give a little bit of an explanation. So Veena 1.0, I was a Chief Finance Officer. So I worked in corporate in the City of London, 20 years, managed teams of hundreds of people, managed budgets of hundreds of millions. I think a lot of corporate high achievers relate to that world of great pay, high stress, and feeling trapped within that life. Veena 2.0 is also a CFO, but a Chief Freedom Officer. So this is really about my using coaching and mentoring skills and business acumen to help high achievers who are feeling trapped and isolated in their lives. And I have a whole sequence of things I do with them. But we have one precious life, and people are tired, not because they're running hard, but because they're running someone else's race. So I connect people back to themselves and help them really expand their view of what's possible, being freed.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. What an opening. Like that is so incredible.
I just ad-lib that on the spot, but that's what I do. Yeah, Chief Freedom Officer.
I absolutely love it. And so the first question I always ask people when they come into this process is
Yeah.
what was the moment when your healing started? Like, what was the big thing that, kind of made you think life can't go on like this? And I feel like you've already kind of started touching on it. So, can you give us more on that?
Well, it's so I always say to the people whose lives touch my own, how many times do you need to die before you wake up? And for me, it was three. So I'm actually going to combine two kind of incidents. So when I was in my 20s, I drowned, and I was saved. I drowned off the east coast of Australia, and I didn't really register. I was 25, surf kayaking. It was dangerous. I kind of ignored it. But when I was 35 in London, crossing a road I've crossed 1,000 times, I was run over by one of those double-decker red buses, iconic London buses, and the point of impact was the back of my head. Now, as all high achievers know, our brains they're our superpower. They're also our prop. We lean on them heavily, over heavily, and our sort of intellectual power carries us through the day. So getting a significant impact on the back of my head, my brain couldn't function. Post-traumatic stress, I had cognitive issues, I was signed off work. It was really difficult. And that was the first time I'd really experienced the sort of trauma of a near-death experience. But sometimes even that doesn't do the thing. And I knew something has to change. I took a break. I went to Bali. I wrote a novel. And I really kind of sat with myself. And at that point, the thing that changed is I started a deep kind of connection to what's the life I want to lead. But high achievers are trapped in something that I call breadwinner isolation, where the life you want is one thing, but you have this responsibility that you have to provide for the life that you're living. You have to pay the bills, the mortgage, the car, going out and seeing your mates, the holidays, all of it. And that's on you. So I didn't break the circle at that point. And then when I was 40, I lost my job when I was 9 months pregnant. And at this point, I was a CFO on a six-figure salary, leading what I thought was a very, very stable life. I kind of made a devil's pact with myself that I'll put up with this stressful life so long as I continue being paid well. And if I can manage that, all will be fine until you lose your job. And I remember the day I found out I lost my job, belly out here. It was 9 months. I went home to my London flat, and I just lay on the bed in the dark. Just, the hot tears come down and they sort of pool in your hairline and the pillow's getting soaked and it's all very dramatic. But I just lay there for hours, you know, and the light in the room went from daylight to the sort of yellow streaks of the street lights outside, dark, and just I was devastated. There's no two way that's the word. It was devastation. I honestly thought my whole life I've made promises to the family I'm going to have, the children I'm going to have, that I'm going to look after you. And we haven't even started. The baby isn't even born, and I failed already. I felt like an absolute failure. And whilst I was lying there on the bed, feeling so awful, I felt this jolt. And I was like, what was that? I thought, we just had an earthquake. And then the jolt happened again. And I looked down my body. I was lying down, and I looked down to my belly, and it was the baby kicking me. And I felt like it was my daughter just saying, look, you're not alone. There's the two of us. Whatever fight you have to find yourself right now and to get yourself through this, you're doing it for both of us. And that moment, seconds before, I had this visual of there's a path. One path is that this acute stress is going to hurt the baby being born. I might even not have the baby with this amount of stress. And the other was, I want to give her the life she deserves. How do I do that? And in that moment, that kick, that changed everything. That woke me up. And whenever in my life I've subsequently felt I'm losing my kind of attachment to what I'm doing and I'm having a hard time, I just close my eyes and I go back to being on that bed with that damp pillow underneath my head and that kick. And you feel it. You feel just this real sense of no, it's like joy and a sweetness, you know, and it fills me. But that woke me up.
Oh my gosh. What like it's so interesting when I listen to like people's stories and like go through this process, because the thing that always resonates with me so much is that two people can go through a very similar scenario, like as in being made redundant or losing their job or, whatever the situation is, and they can have completely different experiences of what that feels like. And I think that idea of like you'd built yourself almost like a cage to live in that needed the
Mm,
salary attached to it, like needed all of those things. And then suddenly it's not there and things have to be different and you have to, in theory, start again from where you are, type of a
yeah.
thing. Like, what did you have to learn about yourself or like embrace about yourself as you went through that process of starting again?
Yeah, and I think the thing for me is I call that my third death. So there was the drowning, there's the bus incident, but this wasn't a physical death, but this was the death of everything I knew to be good. The kind of philosophy I'd built of if I live a life where I'm, the hardest working employee and I'm a good person, I'm a kind, and the system will look after me. That died that day. The story actually isn't about losing a job at pregnancy. It's not that. It's about the fact that for everyone, there is unseen disruption in your life. And whether it's losing a job, whether it's an illness, whether it's a loved one being in trouble, whether it's a relationship, a marriage falling apart, unforeseen things happen on a Tuesday afternoon for millions of us, you know. And I think for me, the thing that I really had to face up to, and it's a central philosophy of my work today, which is we are responsible for ourselves, personal responsibility. If I am unhappy with something in my life, as upsetting or painful or difficult as that may be, I have the responsibility for myself and my actions, and I have the responsibility and ability to change it. And I think that's the thing. When you're in a really dark place, knowing within yourself there's a little flame that's a light that's, look, you're a capable, intelligent, skilled, passionate human being. We all have that. And from that, you will find a way forward, but you're responsible. So you can sit on your bum and feel rotten, and feel your feelings. That's so important. But that responsibility means at some point you have to get up and say, right, this is the reality of my situation. What am I able to do about it? I am responsible for myself.
Hmm. Was it easy to embrace that the first time it happened?
Well, like I said, when I had the bus incident, I didn't make the changes then. It's very
Yeah.
difficult, I think, to step away from the life and the narrative that you've woven to yourself that this is successful living, this is good living. And so being run over by a bus, I didn't actually change my life. I had a lot of trauma, a lot of 2 years to get my brain back, ran away to Bali to hide from it all, but I didn't fundamentally change my life. And this is what I think sometimes it's so difficult to step onto the alternate path. Although intellectually we know we can change things, to connect to yourself and know that actually I have to take action and be a different person, be myself, but also different. I talk about Veena 1.0 and Veena 2.0, the kind of upgrade of self to take that new path. So it's not an easy thing. And I think all of us have a catalyst event. All of us have a boundary that gets crossed. And there's some pain point at that boundary. And I think for me, the difference at 40, losing my job, the pain point was the really acute sense that if I don't handle this, I've got 3 more weeks of the birth, I could lose the baby. And my GP, the next day I saw the doctor and he pretty much said the same thing. If you don't get it, your blood pressure is through the roof. If you don't calm yourself down, you could lose the baby. And that was my catalyst. If I don't get my shit together, right, I'll lose the most precious thing. So all of us have a catalyst point, and it's not easy to make the shift, but it is absolutely doable once you accept you're going to make a change and you step into it. Once you accept you're going to heal.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's the big thing, isn't it? Like I always say to people that healing is an active process. It's not a passive thing. You don't wait it out and things get better. Like you have to actively step into this is not okay anymore. Something's got to be different, and you have to become the person who can hold the
Yeah.
new thing and exist in a new way. I think that that is like it's such an important kind of concept in healing that you can't just wait around. And actually,
Yeah.
as you were kind of going through that process, and you'd lost your job, obviously very quickly given birth very soon after that, like were there moments where you felt like you couldn't hold it together? Where like it was just really
Oh
hard?
God. Yeah. Absolutely. I always say to, you know, people whose lives I touch, I say, look, you're going to go through a tunnel, but in that tunnel, you choose how you experience it. Light little lamps along the way, so it's not completely dark. Find people to walk with you. Okay, pack yourself a little knapsack with some snacks, like mental snacks. So you're not, oh, I'm hungry and like it's a tunnel. Then there's no way through it but forwards, and you have to make that journey. But you can make a choice to get help along the way. And I think for me, the point I really thought, God, am I going to be able to do this? I felt I'm not going to be able to do this. So 10 months before the baby was born, my daughter was born, I'd brought a house in London. I thought I'm going to have a family. I want a nursery. I want a garden. So I'd been living at that point in central London in a 2-bed flat, and I'd bought a house. And I thought, right, because my flat's quite near to work, I will, the house will exchange and I'll move into it and the baby's born. But there I was 3 weeks before the baby's due, and I lost my job. And I thought, right, that house has a large mortgage. How am I going to pay? What do I spend my money on? Do I put it on maternity leave? How am I going to pay the mortgage? I was literally like, oh, what do I do? So, and this is where, my mother was incredible. She said, look, don't worry about it. Rent the house out, move in with me, have the baby, and just give yourself some time to, adjust to being a mum. And so I moved in with my mum, and then COVID came pretty quickly. So then I made the decision to stay with my mother. But between moving with my mum and COVID starting, the people who were renting the house stopped paying their rent. And I'd never evicted people before. And you're in the UK, certainly you have to go through a court process. Started the court process in February 2020, and it was going to take, I was told it would take 3 to 6 months, and then you get the house back. And then March 2020, COVID hit, and one of the emergency COVID laws was you can't evict people. We have these national lockdowns, so you can't evict. All eviction processes were stopped in the courts, and the courts essentially shut down. So there were people living in that family home that I bought for my daughter for 2.5 years. They got to live there rent free. And for 6 months you can handle something, and then you push on and on and on. But I got to a point where I was like, why me? I can't handle it. I can't see how to do this. And I used to do a thing where at nighttime, at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's a really weird ritual. I used to just automatically wake up. And my daughter, little baby, was asleep in bed next to me, and I didn't want her to feel my stress. So I used to go into the bathroom in my mother's house, We were both in one bedroom. I'd gone from this lovely big 2 bedroom flat and I thought, oh, this is only a short thing. We were there for, 3 years. And I would go into the bathroom and I would press my feet into the cold tiles and just breathe. And I would just sit there and think, how am I going to get through this? And I just thought, I don't have answers. I don't know how to do this. And I would just sit there and I wouldn't even cry. I just felt numb. I just remember pushing my feet into the tiles so I could ground myself physically with the cold tiles under my feet. And this went on for a good 4 or 5 months of just waking up every night. And I didn't tell anyone because I was like, what am I supposed to tell them? What am I supposed to say to people? And I think this is one of the challenges of healing, that people keep some of the really painful stuff private to themselves, where actually, if you could talk to someone, you could probably get a bit of support and ease the journey. Like I said, light lamps, get people to walk alongside you in the tunnel. But I remember those cold tiles. Mm.
It's so interesting. And I think when you look at it in hindsight, like you can say, like, oh yeah, should have spoken about that, should have told somebody, should have got that help. But in the moment, it can feel so isolating. I know in one of the earlier episodes, I spoke about like that kind of fear of opening up about my healing journey all of these years later, suddenly putting it on such a public platform and realizing that some of the things that I discussed with my guests, some of the feelings that I had and the thoughts that I had and the emotions that I felt, like I'd never ever told my family or my
Mm.
friends or like any of the people close to me.
Yeah.
And now suddenly, healed woman, years later, none of that stuff impacts me anymore. But suddenly it's likely going to impact the people around me because they're going to find out about it for the first
Yeah.
time like
Yeah.
so far after the situation. And now I can look back at it and think like in that moment it would have made such a big difference to actually have that conversation and have that support. What do
Mm.
you think made you not have that conversation at the time?
I think I felt, I mean, the thing was, it was comparison to others and that sort of internalized sense of failure. And I felt I'm at an age where I'm supposed to be this successful person living in a nice house with a family. And yet here I am in in a single bedroom in my mum's home. Um, and I just felt like an abject failure. And I felt if I reach out to people, as much as I want someone to kind of give me a hug and say, Veena, it's okay, I'm really sorry you're going through this. As much as you want compassion, I felt before compassion will come my self-humiliation, that I have to tell people this. And this was during COVID when you're on Zoom calls to clients and friends and people, and everyone is in their sort of nice kitchen with the big windows behind them. And you're sitting there thinking, I can't possibly let people know what I'm going. I kind of felt like I have X amount that I can handle. And I can handle this waking up at 2 o'clock, the cold tiles. I can handle getting up, being on Zoom, trying to work with clients and having my 2-year-old next to me while I'm working. I can handle it. And the freaking daily COVID updates from the really depressing British government, I can handle that. But to get the compassion I need, I have to accept humiliation and that I can't handle. And I knew I can't do it. And I just felt like an abject failure, even though rationally my mind was saying to me, but Veena, it's not your fault that these people are not paying their rent. COVID is not your fault. Or the situation you're in, you have not created this. You're not to blame. I knew that. But our intellect and our hearts and the piece that churns our emotional self, our fear, you know, the part of us that holds and fuels our fear, doesn't always listen to intellectual rationalizing. Yeah, I
Yeah, no,
know.
that's
When I told
100%
friends,
true.
when COVID was over and we finally got the people out the house 2.5 years later, and we moved in, and then had to get the house ready. They'd smashed windows and broken furniture and all manner of stuff. There was dog excrement in the carpets, all sorts of nasty stuff. And then I finally cleaned the house up, and we had our first housewarming, and friends came, and I said, "Oh, we're in here, after 3 years." And that was the first time friends heard about what was going on, and they were like, "Why on earth didn't you say anything?" And I was like, yeah, I know. I didn't, did I? Incredible what people hold.
Mm. I think like there's two key things with that kind of concept is one, compassion for everyone because you don't know what people are holding. I think like that is like such an important lesson that so many people learn when they're going through a healing journey. But I think the second one is that idea of like, I love that idea of the amount of humiliation that like you felt that you could hold. Because I was having this conversation with a friend the other day, and we were talking about like when things go wrong. And I said to her, the only reason we don't ask for help is because of our pride, because we
Yeah,
have a picture of what it's supposed to look like, what
yeah,
we're supposed to have achieved, what, you know, salary, house, job,
yeah,
etc., you know, we're supposed to have. And like there's this like illusion, I think even more so nowadays with like social media and all of this, that everyone's lives are so perfect,
mm.
so easy to sit on the outside and think, yeah, but if I throw my mess into the middle of all of this perfect, it's going to be too messy for people to kind of deal with.
Well, I think there's a sense that, I mean, there's two things there. Firstly, we have a fear that we're going to be judged, right? And the reason we have that fear is because when we feel that, we're actually projecting our own response to others because we're coming from a place of ego. If my friend told me this, you know, that they suddenly lost their job, well, my ego says, well, hang on, having a six-figure income is successful. So if they've now given up their job and they're spending 3 months working in Starbucks as a barista, earning next to nothing compared to, well, is that success? That's your ego speaking. And I think one of the biggest journeys, well, one of the longest miles in the tunnel to healing is that piece where you say to ego, enough, you're not helping me. I understand you have a role, but you're not helping me. And right now, in my healing and my vulnerability, I need compassion, I need love, I need gentleness. And if I can't get my hugs from others, well, I'm going to give them to myself. And as much as you got a real fiery sass about you, ego, you're not kind. So you need to step aside so I can allow compassion in. And once you're in a place of compassion, if a friend rung you and they'd lost their job and they were working in Starbucks from compassion, you'd be like, do you know what, babe? I bet you're the best goddamn barista there is. Good for you that you're not sitting at home staring at the walls and you're trying to do something. Like you got to really celebrate that you're doing something. You haven't just given into the situation. So good for you. So do you get free coffees then? Can I come in and get a free coffee? You know, you give them compassion and humor and love. So I think
Mm.
moving from ego to compassion, and how we fear other people rejecting us, that's actually a projection of our internal space. And once we shift internally, then you shift the fear of being judged. Not
Mm.
entirely, but it certainly reduces its hold on you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that I noticed going through my own healing journey was when I came out the other side, I was so much more comfortable with who I am as a
Yeah.
person and who I like have become as a person, that
Yeah.
I genuinely didn't care what other people thought about me. And I remember so many of my friends, once we like again, like after COVID, meeting up with people, haven't seen them for a while, literally people being like, I wish I was more like you. Like I wish I like genuinely didn't care as much
Yeah.
as you don't care. And I was thinking like that is like it's such an incredible skill to learn as you go through this process,
Yeah.
because so much holds you back when you have that constant worry of what other people will think, what other people will do, how other people will react. Like there's so much baggage in all of that that you have to hold. So I think like
Mm.
again that whole process of healing, like there's so much good that can come out of that kind of journey. And as you kind of go through, I always like to ask people like what was your biggest like outlook change or belief change from
So
like Veena 1.0 to 2.0?
I'm going to talk about that in a second, but just before I do, I just want to add one point to what you've said there. Healing is actually an act of reprioritization. That's essentially what healing is. And what you're doing is you still care and you care deeply because that's our human experience. But what you're doing is you prioritize caring about what you think ahead of what others think. So you still care deeply, okay? You just care about yourself first before others. That's it. It's healing is an act of reprioritization. That's such an Insta quote, isn't it? So, so the biggest shift for me, I had been a person who, planning for the future, for this, and planning ahead. And I just dropped all that. And I said, actually, all you've got is today. So I thought it's important, and especially in the coaching work that we do with people, it is important to have a vision for the future and a motivation in these longer term goals. But it's more about having them so they inform what you do today and you lead a more charged presence. The only day you have, the only time you have is today. And so the thing I did is I said, well, you know what? I'm going to define what is the life I want to live. So rather than just coasting along, just to make sure that my present counts, I'm gonna decide what is my rich life, what is my wealthy life. And so long as I'm living within that life each day, then I'm all right with that. Because whether I'm here for 2 years, 20 years, or 42, it doesn't matter. And so then I really sort of decided I'm going to be present. I'm going to do a life design exercise, which is a fundamental game changer. Design what I feel is the good life, and then live that daily. And that really helped me release a lot of future expectations. What's the point of worrying about things twice? If something's going to go wrong in the future, worry about it when it happens. Don't carry that cognitive and emotional load today. So just accepting that the only time I have is the present. That's the biggest shift I made.
Yeah. I mean, and again, I was exactly the same. I was a serial planner. I remember people laughing at me because I literally had like a budget for 10 years of like what I was going to spend all of my salary money on, and then I suddenly didn't have a salary. Like, oh, now what?
Yeah.
Like, just
Oops.
like, it's so
Yeah,
mental, isn't
exactly.
it?
Exactly. So when I bought the house, the London house I bought, I had a 35-year mortgage. And I was like, but on my CFO salary, multiple six-figure income, I reckon I can pay that off in 12 years. And I did a fancy spreadsheet. They sent the other, and I could have paid it off in 12 years. So where am I today? I've owned that house for a while. I have not paid down the mortgage the way I had expected to in that spreadsheet. But does that mean I'm failing? Of course not. Paying the mortgage, the house had a refurb. It's a lovely space. And my family are healthy and happy, and we all sleep in nice beds with clean duvets. That's success,
Yeah,
So focusing on the
absolutely.
present rather than the future. The mortgage will get paid. It will.
Mm.
And if it takes 35 years, well, okay. It takes 35 years. That's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And like as you have kind of gone through, just like touching back on the kind of CFO six-figure version, like as you've gone through and kind of redefined this purpose and kind of like gotten to where you are now, like what was that journey of like going from a finance officer to a freedom officer? Like how did that all kind of happen?
So it happened through a delicious path of failures, is what I would say. So I think one of the things that high achievers, whether you are, self-employed or whether you're in a professional world where you're employed elsewhere, we have this mindset of, do you know what? I'm switched on. I'll figure it out. Yeah, I'll just figure it out, right? And so basically when my daughter was 4, when we were leaving my mother's house and moving into the home, in leaving family, it meant that those long corporate hours, I no longer had family around to help with the school pickups and the dinners. And I used to come home and my sister would feed my daughter while I was just on the laptop every evening. And I realized actually this sort of corporate life with the long hours, it's not compatible with a little girl who's just turned 4, who's about to start school, and we're leaving family. So I don't have that support network. So I made the decision to leave the corporate world, basically because I thought I worked so hard to be a mum, and I'm just completely absent, and I'm not giving my daughter anything, and she matters. They're only young for a certain age, so I left the corporate world. And plan A, where I tripped up, is I didn't think about my next step. I thought, oh, I'll just figure it out. I was so desperate to get out. This feeling of when you're trapped and you just want out, that I took the leap without thinking about it. And I just assumed, somewhat arrogantly, I guess, that you know what, I'm a six-figure earner, I'll just figure it out. I'm switched on, I've got skills, I'm a CFO, I'll figure it out. And so plan A, I had for many years, I have, as well as being quite a rational individual, I have a very deep creative streak, which is really fundamental to who I am and my approach to life. And I've been a storyteller and a writer since my childhood. And when I was in my mid-30s, I did an MA in creative writing. And after that, I wrote a novel. When I was in Bali, I finished the novel. And I thought, you know what? I need an alternative career. I'm going to finish the novel. I'm going to be a writer, right? So I started doing the further drafts of the novel. And for 8 weeks, I wrote every day. And I was writing and writing. And I love writing is when you really fall into creative freedom, it's really fun. But after 8 weeks, I was like, hang on, I've written like 6 prologues, 8 versions of chapter 1. What the hell is going on? I'm writing every day, but I'm not progressing. And I was like, what's going on? Why am I paddling so fast, writing for hours every day, and yet I'm not actually achieving anything? What is going on? So then I took a step back and I was like, what's something internally I'm sabotaging myself, or what is it? And I realized that there was a dialogue going on inside of me that I was not paying attention to. My creative self was like, oh, let's write the most fun novel possible. My kind of self that wanted to sell the novel to earn a living was like, oh, you got to have a fantastic first page so that an agent loves it and falls in love with it and you get a decent sign up. And then there was a voice at the back saying, right, you know that like writers in the UK, the median earnings for a writer is £7,000 a year. And I was like, that's not even 2 months running cost for you, and that's before tax. So, and then it's going to take a few years to write a novel, and then you don't know if it's going to get signed up, and then it's got to sit in Amazon and Waterstones, and you're going to hope people are like, you're following this beautiful creative path, which gives you a lot of joy, but you've not bothered. I hadn't done the exercise of facing up to what I call my acceptable tensions, which is the risk assessment of I'm taking this new path, but actually, how does that land? I hadn't considered, I'm the breadwinner in my family, and I talk a lot about breadwinner isolation, the pressure on the breadwinners of the family. I hadn't considered, in my desperation to leap, how am I going to effectively earn money from this new path? So I was like, okay, you need to revisit what I'm doing. So then I thought, okay, let me go back to basics. My life would be so much easier if I didn't want to be a writer. And I just stayed with finance. So what's going on? Why do I want to be a writer? What do I want to achieve in writing? And then I went back to the joy from my childhood and what it is I got from books and writing. And I realized in writing, you observe the hero's journey. It's always the same thing. You've got compelling characters in some form of jeopardy, and you follow the arc of their story, and then you have the novel. And in books, we see so much of the journey to success, the journey to healing, the journey to, achieving quests and challenges and all sorts. And I was like, what am I trying to do? What I'm trying to do is the gift I received from books of healing and knowledge and sanctuary and education and entertainment and somewhere to go when things got difficult. I got that through books, and I'm trying to give that to people, a place to go for sanctuary and support and growth and protection and help. I'm trying to give that to people, but through books. So what's a more direct way of doing that rather than being a writer? And then I looked at what have I done in the last 15 years of my life where I've really felt people have felt helped by me. And that's when I thought, actually, as a chief finance officer, as a CFO, I've done so much coaching, mentoring. And the main thing, the more senior I got, that people, asked my support for was soundboarding. CEOs, heads of director, board members, Veena, we've got an idea. Can we just pass it through you and tell us what you think? And I was like, actually, I've been coaching and mentoring for years. It's obvious I want to help people, and there's a far more direct way of doing that. So I chose writing to be a passion, to remain fun, but not be where I earn my main living from, which is kind of ironic because I'm writing social content every damn day now. But I wrote in my journal years ago, I want a life where instead of numbers and Excel every day, I'm writing every day. And now I'm like, be careful what you wish for. But that was it. I had to, in taking failures and missteps, I had to go back to what am I trying to do at source? What's my why? And in doing that and really kind of going through that journey, finding actually what is my purpose.
I love that. I think like so many people think that the whole object of success is to avoid failure. And it's the complete opposite. Like the
complete
whole
opposite.
object of success is to keep moving regardless of failure.
Yeah. In knowing what you don't want to do, you discover what you do want to do.
100%, 100%. I love that. So, as you have kind of navigated this path, I mean, three near-death experiences is more than we've ever had in one podcast episode. So there's a lesson to learn here that we need to dive into.
If I'm a cat, I've got what I think 5 lives
Like,
left.
yeah,
Yeah.
five or six more to go. But like as you're kind of going through this journey, then if somebody was at that kind of breaking point, like now listening, what would your advice be for them? What do they do? How do they move?
So my advice is, well, there's 3 elements. First of all, self-compassion. Don't beat yourself up. Okay. Just really deep breath and just say, wherever you are, you're okay. Okay. You are an incredibly skilled, capable, passionate person. You will find a way through it, but you don't find your way through it when you're in a place of trauma and pain. So you need to just give yourself those internal hugs and take a moment. Stop beating yourself up is the first thing. So the second thing is pay attention and try to find what's the thing that's hurting you. If you're in a dark place, what's the thing that's creating that darkness? Is it that family? Is it work? Is it yourself? Is it your health? What's creating the pain? And the way through it, the way through that really helped me is this idea of, look, I'm responsible for myself. Okay. Release blaming others. The past has happened. That's all fine, but you can't go back and change the past. And blaming others and holding on to anger ultimately hurts you. So saying to myself, okay, if I could, from a blank piece of paper, just say, right, what is it I want? Okay. So for me, that was life design, because I was looking at my whole life, saying, what is it I want in life? What's a good life for me, and how am I going to provide for that? Okay, that was my work. And pretty much all of my clients do that. It's a game changer, life design. It's the first time so many people sit down and determine, what's my health, what's my love and relationships, my money, my career, my spirituality and purpose, my environment, all of that. So really compassion, first and foremost. Secondly, if you can, try to isolate what's hurting you. And thirdly, you are responsible and capable. How can you create from a blank piece of paper, what's the alternative to the thing that's hurting me, and how do I get there? So life design is a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And, so many people who've come through this podcast journey, but also on the retreats and in the coaching, and your clients as well will be exactly the same as this.
Yeah.
So many people haven't actually sat down and asked those questions and thought about those things, because society tells us these are the
Yeah.
5 steps you need to take, and if you take these 5 steps, you're successful. The amount
Yeah.
of people that I've spoken to on the podcast that have said, I ticked all of the right boxes and I still wasn't happy. And it's
Yeah.
like, it's that whole life design piece of actually
Yeah.
there's more to life than just ticking the 5 boxes and hoping that that makes everything okay. Like, and for some people, it
Yeah.
absolutely will. And that's wonderful. Like, if you're
Yeah.
one of those people, great. You don't have to look for problems just because you tick the boxes. Like, that's fine as
Well, I think
well.
the thing is, if you want to get healthy, you don't go to the gym and spend 2 hours a day on bicep curls and that's it. You don't. You look at, if you want good health, you're going to look at eating right, sleeping right, moving right, thinking right. You're going to look at, yes, gym workouts, but you're also going to look at hydration. You're going to look at nutrition. You're going to look at smart habits like food planning. You're going to look at the holistic system of your health. So HIIT workouts and yoga and breathing and drinking enough water and sleeping, all of this. So you have this holistic approach to your health. Why do you not have a holistic approach to your life? I want to live more purposefully. Okay, so what does that mean for your work? Okay, I want to go and I want to earn more money for my family. So I'm going to take a really stressful job. And then the pain point I have that I don't see my family enough and I'm always cancelling my mates because I'm knackered. Well, how is that solved? By taking that next more aggressive job. So have this, that's essentially what life design is this holistic view of your whole life. And then you say what it is I want. Okay. So I'm not a HIIT workouts person. I'm more of a yoga person. Okay. So do yoga, but alongside yoga, maybe do some, kind of lifting weights at home. Okay. That works for me. So life design is about holistically looking at the whole picture. And I think that's the issue. Most people high achievers are addicted to achievement, and they tend to have a really successful work life, and everything else is falling by the wayside. So you have to make an intervention and look at your whole life holistically, and then decide what works for you and what doesn't, and then make your decisions.
I love that. Oh my gosh, I love it. So the final question that I always ask people on the podcast, because I think it's so important for people to understand that healing is an ongoing journey. We're never kind of done. And it's always okay to not be okay. Like it's always okay for something to not be perfect.
Yeah.
Is I always ask people, like, what's the next level of healing? What's the next thing that you're working towards in your own kind of life?
So I think for me, having made the move to essentially doing work that's meaningful. I mean, I love what I do. I love what I do. It makes me so happy, and that's made such a difference. You know, I'm just, my skin's better. I'm losing weight. I'm more energetic. My friends are like, "Oh, you're so much more fun now." I'm like, "Oh, thanks." But yes, I am more fun now. So I think I'm doing work that I love, but I am now self-employed and an entrepreneur. And there is a journey as essentially, the business owner. And I think the thing I've had to really kind of lean into in this part of my healing journey is the imperfection within me. This compassion towards there are so many missteps while you're figuring out how to run your own business and how to work with people and how to elevate yourself to be, Veena 2.0. And there's a lot of fail, try something, fail, learn. How can I do it better? Try something, fail, learn. It's this cycle. And I think, even the most elevated entrepreneurs. I was at a summit this weekend, 4-day summit. People are talking about 9-figure earners. It used to be 6 figures, then it was 7 figures, then 8, and now 3 times over the weekend we had panels on earning 9 figures. And I was like, my God, when does it stop? But even those people are all about experimentation, trying and failing and learning. So I think there's a real piece as a human being, not just as an entrepreneur, but learning the art of being okay with your imperfections, learning the art of courage to try something and not knowing if it's going to work. But if you don't try it, you won't know. You have to leap. You have to do stuff. So I think this journey of imperfection and the vulnerability that comes with that and saying it's okay. And that's not easy. That's not easy because we're used to being high performing excellence. So it's a departure. But that's the next phase of the healing, because again, like I said, I now care about what I think and what I feel and what's important to me in terms of my life design, which I've now done. So that's important. And if it means trying things, try them. Imperfection and vulnerability is the next phase.
I love that. And I love that, like, that realization of like corporate high earner, imperfection and vulnerability are two of the like absolute no-goes for people who want to be in those spaces. So to come out, be your own boss, be an entrepreneur, work with people, and actually have to start leaning into that. I think that that's an incredible, it's an incredible next step, an incredible area to start healing into. So we are gonna wrap up there and wish you all of the best for your continued
Thank you
healing
so
journey.
much.
It's been
Thank you
wonderful
so
to have you
much.
on the podcast.
Oh, it's been an absolute treat. You said to me when we first started, you said, Veena, it's going to be like having a glass of wine with your best friend. And actually, this has been such a lovely, relaxed and chilled experience. I almost wish we had wine. But it's been a real pleasure chatting with you, Jacky. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. And I hope the people who are listening to your work really appreciate that you're putting something amazing out there for them. And I hope they take some of your wisdom and it helps them on their journey to healing.
Thank you for listening to another inspiring episode of The Diary of Discovery. If you found value in today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends, family, or anyone else you think might benefit from the stories of hope and transformation. Your feedback means the absolute world to us, so please take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help us to reach even more listeners and continue to bring this meaningful content to the world. Until next time, remember, your healing journey is valid. You are never alone, and you have the strength to get through this. Keep shining bright, and we'll see you in the next episode of The Diary of Discovery.